It was a Tuesday evening in late October, the kind of evening where the city looks almost beautiful because of the rain, the streetlights blurring into soft orange circles on the wet pavement, and the traffic moving slowly as if the whole world had decided to take its time. Sophia was 24 years old. She had the kind of face that made strangers feel comfortable, open eyes the color of river stones, and wavy blonde hair that she never quite managed to tame. She wore a white t-shirt tucked into a black skirt, and her heels clicked on the sidewalk in a rhythm that she had grown used to hearing. After long shifts at the restaurant where she waitressed 5 days a week, she was tired that evening. Not the kind of tired that a good night of sleep fixes, but the kind that builds up slowly over months, the kind that settles into your shoulders and your jaw and reminds you that you are holding more than you are letting on. Her rent was 3 days overdue. Her phone plan had been suspended that morning, and in the small leather coin pouch that she kept clipped inside her bag, there were exactly 14 gold coins, the tips she had collected from the lunch crowd, that she had been planning to count and roll and take to the bank before the end of the week. Those 14 coins were all she had. Until Friday, she had been walking toward the bus stop when she saw him. He was sitting against the wall of a stone building at the far edge of the block, slumped low with his knees pulled up and his back pressed flat against the cold surface. He was an old man, perhaps 70 or a little older, with a long white beard that had spread across his chest like winter grass and deep lines carved into his face that told you immediately that his life had not been simple. He wore a dark coat that had once been heavy and good quality, but had thinned with years of use, and beside him on the wet pavement rested a piece of torn cardboard on which someone, perhaps himself, perhaps a stranger, had written 2 words in large uneven letters: hunger and homeless. Sophia slowed down. She told herself she did not have enough to give. She told herself that the bus would come in 4 minutes and that she needed to keep moving. She told herself all the reasonable things that a young woman with 14 coins and an overdue rent bill tells herself when she walks past someone who needs help, and then she stopped. She crouched down in front of him, right there on the wet sidewalk in her good skirt and her work heels, and she looked at him, not past him, not around him, at him. The old man looked back at her with eyes that were pale and quiet like water at the bottom of a deep well. There was no performance in his face. No reaching, no asking. He simply looked at her the way very old people sometimes do, with a patience that has outlasted expectation. Sophia opened her coin pouch. She did not count them. She did not hold back a few for herself. She simply poured the coins, all 14 of them, into the palm of his weathered hand and held her own hands there for a moment underneath his, as if she wanted to make sure not a single one fell. The old man looked down at his palm, then he looked back at her. She said quietly, and she meant it, that she hoped he would get something warm to eat tonight. Then she stood up, straightened her skirt, and walked to the bus stop. She did not feel particularly heroic. She felt cold and a little hollow, and she was not entirely sure how she was going to manage dinner, but she walked with the particular lightness that comes from doing something you will not regret. That rare feeling of having spent yourself on something true. What Sophia did not know, what she could not have known, was that the old man's name was Harold Mercer. He was 72 years old. He had built a logistics company from a single delivery van that he had purchased with borrowed money at the age of 29. Over the following 4 decades, he had grown that company into one of the most respected freight operations in the country, employing over 3,000 people at its peak. He had sold it 11 years ago, and now he had more money than he would ever need, and more time than he knew what to do with, and a question that had been living in his chest for the better part of 3 years. A question that had started the night his wife Margaret passed away, and had never really quieted since he wanted to know if human kindness was still real, not the kind you perform for cameras, not the kind you do when people are watching, not the charity gala kind, or the tax write-off kind, but the quiet, stubborn, ordinary kind, the kind that cost something. He had spent 6 evenings sitting on that corner over the past 3 weeks, dressed in old clothes with his cardboard sign watching the city pass. Most people looked away. Some dropped coins quickly as if speed made the discomfort smaller. A few stopped to ask if he was all right before moving on. But Sophia had crouched down in her work clothes at the end of a long day and looked him in the eye, and she had given him everything she had without making him feel small for taking it. Harold sat with the coins in his hand for a long time. After she left, the rain tapped steadily on the pavement around him. A cab slid through a puddle and the headlights swept across his face, and then passed, and he sat with 14 small gold coins and something he had not felt in 3 years. Something he had almost stopped looking for. He felt certain again, certain that the thing Margaret had always believed, that goodness does not disappear, it just moves quietly from person to person, like a lantern passed between hands in the dark, was still true. He hired a private investigator not to intrude, but simply to find out her name and where she worked. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday morning, Sophia arrived at the restaurant for her shift and found a sealed envelope waiting for her with the manager. She opened it at the counter with her coat still on and her bag over her shoulder. Inside was a handwritten letter. It was written in the careful, unhurried script of someone who had grown up when people still wrote letters by hand. It said that an old man had sat on a street corner recently, and that a young woman had stopped and crouched down and handed him all the coins in her pouch, and looked him in the eyes and told him she hoped he would get something warm to eat. It said that this young woman had no way of knowing it, but she had answered a question that he had been carrying for 3 years. It said that he was not a beggar, he had never been hungry a day in his recent life, but that he had been lonely and doubtful, and that she had given him something that no amount of money could purchase. She had given him his faith back. At the bottom of the letter, beneath a careful signature, was a bank draft. Sophia had to read the number 3 times before she believed it. It was enough to cover 6 months of rent. It was enough to pay for the small accounting course she'd been putting off for 2 years because she could never quite scrape together the enrollment fee. It was more money than she had ever held in her life she stood at the counter for. A long time, and what moved through her was not the shock of the money, though that came too, but something older and quieter, something her grandmother had said to her once when she was a little girl sitting at a kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon. Her grandmother had said that generosity is never wasted, even when no one sees it, even when it costs you, even when it makes no practical sense. It lands somewhere, it changes something and the world, though it may not show it right away, keeps a careful account. Sophia had not thought of those words in years. She thought of them now. She thought of an old man with white hair and a worn coat sitting alone in the rain holding 14 small coins. She thought of how tired she had been that evening, and how easy it would have been to keep walking. She thought of all the times in life when the right thing and the easy thing stand at a fork in the road and wait to see which one you choose. She wrote Harold back. She thanked him, not for the money, though she was honest about what it meant, but for reminding her that a single moment of kindness between 2 strangers is not a small thing. It is actually one of the largest things a human being can do. They met for coffee 3 weeks later at a small cafe near the restaurant. Harold arrived in a proper coat and good shoes and without the cardboard sign, and Sophia almost did not recognize him at first, until she saw those pale, quiet eyes, the ones that had looked at her on the sidewalk with no performance in them at all. They talked for nearly 2 hours. He told her about Margaret. He told her about the company and the delivery van, and the early years, when there had been more worry than certainty. He told her that the older he got, the more he believed that character is not what you do when life is going well, but what you do on a Tuesday evening, when you are tired and your rent is late, and you only have 14 coins to your name. Sophia told him she would remember that for the rest of her life, and she did years later when Sophia had built her own small bookkeeping firm and had a life that was steady and full. She kept a small glass jar on her desk. Inside it were 14 gold coins, not the original ones. Those had fed an old man's faith on a rainy October evening, and she liked to think they had gone on to do good things after that, but 14 new ones that she had set aside herself as a reminder that you never know what the person in front of you is carrying, a reminder that kindness given freely, even when it costs you, is never truly lost, a reminder that on any given Tuesday evening in any ordinary city in the rain, the world is quietly asking each of us a question, and the answer we give matters more than we know if this story touched something in you. If it reminded you of a moment when someone's small act of kindness changed your day, or your week, or maybe something larger, then please take a moment and give this video a like. Share it with someone you love, a friend, your sister, your neighbor, someone who needs a reminder today that goodness is still out there moving quietly through the world. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this one, and leave a comment below telling us about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness, or a time you gave it. Your story matters too. We will see you in the next one.